And also, Judge Singh is the chair of the post-Stephen Lawrence inquiry, and he also led the inquiry into the murder of Zahid Mubarak in Feltnam Youth Offenders Institute. And he also chaired the Race Challenges for the Future report, which was reviewed in 2002. He's also chair of Gwalia, a non-executive member of the council at Cardiff University, the chair of National Association of Children's Contact Centres in Wales. He is the chair of a Recycle, Reuse, More Green project. He's also the independent chair of the complaints panel of the early Welsh Assembly government. All those years ago, it was called that. And the Criminal Justice Consultative Council of England, and he's a member of the Judicial Service Board Civil Committee. He's also the Equal Treatment Advisory Committee of the Judicial Services Board, and as we have said, the one outstanding chair of the CRE, and brought to us the CRE office in Wales. So he's the governor of Swansea, Gower College, and also former governor of the Swansea Institute of Higher Education, now called the University of Wales Trinity St. David. Welcome, Judge. I have been absolutely delighted to be able to be with you today and to ask journey start. How did it begin?
Well, thank you, Uzo. It all started in Fiji. Junior and senior education. Senior level was known as Senior Cambridge Certificate, which is equivalent of A levels in this country. I applied for a number of jobs, civil service, but it went unanswered. So I started to find my way forward and started to drive a taxi. I got a taxi license and drove taxis. And one day, one of my customers picking her up from the market was the head of the civil service. And as she was talking to me, and she said, "Driver, you speak English." So I said, "Ma'am, yes." "Have you been to school?" "Yes, ma'am." So I told her what I'd done, and she said, "Have you applied to join the civil service?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, I've applied a number of times, but I have not heard anything." And I had a letter on Monday following Saturday's journey of this head of the civil service. And I worked there and went up as, worked in a number of departments, finishing off in department as a senior executive salaries officer, looking after all the teachers' salaries right across the islands, 100 different islands, and every teacher had his or her salary at the end of each month without fail. And understand the communication difficulties. And I decided that I was persuaded by, I think, all Elston Gardner's book, and I used to attend criminal cases, even murder trials in Fiji, and from the age of about 15, being about 6'2", I was passed for more than 18-year-old, and so I would sit and listen to it, and then decided that I will do law, and photos were being exchanged, and those Asian brothers and sisters who are here will understand that the arranged marriages were being actively pursued. But I decided that I wouldn't go follow Sunak's footsteps and marry some very rich lady and have a very rich father-in-law in India, I decided that I will follow the golden thread. Being a Commonwealth country, I'll come to London. And that's where my journey arrived in London.
Wow, that's incredible. What a journey from the beautiful islands of Fiji to wet London. So, did you always want to be a leader? Did you imagine that one day you would be the first and only Asian judge in the whole of Wales? And how was that journey for you? How was that journey?
Certainly, I didn't think that I would be a leader. I was very, very concerned with anything like having a wig and gown. But my first hurdle, a friend of mine was supposed to meet me at the airport. Having come from a very small country with only one airport, I arrived and the flight was diverted from 3 to 2. And I arrived at Terminal 2, couldn't find him. So I asked a gentleman standing outside the airport. He looked at me and said, "I think you're looking lost." I said, "Yes, sir. I'm trying to get to Southall. And how do I get there?" "Oh, simple. Get a coach to Gloucester Road, get a tube to Ealing Broadway, get 207 and ask the driver where Trinity Road is." So I looked at him. He said, "You don't follow that." I said, "I followed all of it except where do I buy a tube?" What is a tube? So, cut a short story long, I arrived in Southall without my friend and knocked on the door. And they were absolutely flabbergasted to see I was there. And that's followed, and I had been accepted in Exeter University to do law. And my friend later that evening said, "From one jungle to another, do law in London." So I said, "All right." So on Monday we went to Council of Middle Temple and part of as well. And the lady didn't look up at all. And I said that I have got, she said, "Have you got any A levels?" I said, "I've got senior chemistry certificate," which I understand, ma'am, is A levels. "Yes, if you had applied from Fiji, you would have been, but not from here."
Wow.
So I said, "What should I do?" "Well, we require 2 A levels."
Wow.
I said, "Very well, I will." And I went straight after that to UTC, which was University Tutorial College, opposite TUC, Trade Union Congress.
Yes.
And I went there and I said, "Can I do A levels?" I said, "Yes, 2-year course." I said, "No, I want to do it in 1 year." And so I did that, and I went back the following year and started my career at the bar. And it was a struggle in between in getting accommodation. First thing, of course, I say so when looking through the list of houses, flats, rooms, no blacks, no dogs, no Irish.
Wow.
So that was the struggle for many, many months before we managed to get into Alliance International Hostel. And when I arrived there, the warden didn't even look up and said, "No room, too many Indians here." So I said to my friend, "Hold on." He said, "Too many Indians." He says, "International. So let's go in again." I said, "Excuse me, sir, how many Fijians have you got?" He looked up. He said, "No, are you from Fiji?" I said, "Yes, sir." "Well, come in." So I got how much is it? 200 guineas a month. Well, I was receiving 200 guineas from Fiji. So I had to do something about it. And I started washing in the hostel, booked into work in Zetta's pool coupons, checking coupons. And then in the summer, working for Bachelor's Food Factory, green peas in the Bachelor's Factory. So
Wow.
survived and did manage to get called to the bar, having to both my wig and gown, but I suggested having family by then in Wales. There's a connection between Wales and Fiji with rugby. I'm sure they will be better there, and I'll be received better. All I wanted to do was to do my pupillage. That's when you become fully qualified barrister, as you know, Uzo, and then I will go back to Fiji. And when I arrived in Swansea, was the barrier number 3. Not only was no blacks, no Irish, not as conspicuously done as in London, but here it was also no blacks or. So I tried to apply it in a prosecutor, and he said, don't try in Swansea, go to Cardiff because Tiger Bay, they may well accept you better there. And the barristers, which came back to me years later, saying to my head of chambers, we don't need any parkies in Swansea or in Wales, so we need to be careful. So that is how it was. The racism was not overt but covert in many ways, not true, not only in the legal profession, but public sector, private sector. And it made me more determined to make sure that I fight for equality and justice, and not just becoming barrister.
That's incredible, Judge Singh. Nobody could believe that you started by washing dishes and making good where you found yourself. It's very, very similar to the journey that I had in 1993 and 94, early part of the 90s when we arrived. Absolutely horrendous, the treatment that people were meted out, and it still has not changed, and that is the saddest situation. But your legacy of fighting racial equality, fighting for racial equality and justice is legendary. I'm excited to talk to you about your journey because we have very little time today. Your journey then onto the thing. It's a huge thing. How did you then get to the bench? But before you respond, you're having so many comments. Our lovely brother, who's a big constant on the platform, Reggie Al-Hadi from the Yemeni community in Newport, is our best attender every time. So he says, so inspirational, Judge Singh. You have a wonderful attitude and a great commitment and hard work. What an example to all of us as young people and the communities. We're standing on your shoulders. That's what he said. We're standing on your shoulders, Judge Singh. This is a wonderful endorsement from Reggie, and my sister-in-law, OBE, she's always the second top attendee on the hot seat. So absolutely thrilled to hear you and to endorse your leadership example. So the question then, which you literally answered, was what are some of the challenges you had and how did you overcome them? In terms of stepping into from being a barrister into the bench, what were some of the challenges that you encountered and how did that work for you?
Just touch slightly on before getting to the bench. When we eventually I managed to get into a set of chambers, I would be started practicing in Swansea. Once in chambers, solicitors would tell my clerk, sorry, sir, clients would be uncomfortable with having Mr. Singh as a barrister, but we have nothing against him. When I would arrive in the robing room, I would often be greeted as, morning, Sambo, how are you? And didn't stop there. Many judges were equally racist. Outside the legal profession, walking in the city center, all stopped to look at me, intervening to stop an abuse of a Bangladeshi waiter. I was set upon and by four young youths and kicked to the ground and left bleeding. It went on, and I, like many of our black brothers in particular suffering today, I was stopped regularly and searched, often by asked, was I here legally? Which restaurant was I working in? And so overcame all of that. I was determined that I will make sure that I present myself as a barrister, representing people, doing justice, ensuring there's justice. In those days, appointment of judges was by word of mouth, and often the senior judges will come and ask me, who do I recommend so suitable for this particular job? And often I would say to myself, as the Rumpel of the Old Bailey will say, darling, but you are looking at one. But I wouldn't say that. I would introduce somebody else and they will be appointed. And I was bypassed all the time. And eventually I applied, and after I was interviewed, and I knew that there was another person who had applied, who was a junior barrister from my chambers. And I asked the panel when they said, have you any questions? I said, yes. How many positions are available? And they said, he said, only one. I gather that a colleague of mine from my chambers has applied. Oh, we can't disclose that. I said, I know John Thomas. He has had his interview. And he said, yes. I said, he's a person to deal with tribunal work than me. So I will withdraw my application. Anonymous of you, have you applied for any other job? I said, I have, but never been given an interview. And I was then given an interview for district judges. And I was appointed thereafter. And after that, when I became a judge and I was allocated to family court in Merthyr, which is a lovely town. I spent 18 years there. But of the High Court judges and again, leaders of the circuit will approach me and say, no, Ray, we need to move you up from district judge to circuit judge. But there's one condition. You must stop talking about race. You cannot go on talking about race. You must distance yourself. I said, I don't want to move anywhere else. And
good future.
It went on. And I am proud that I did not listen to, because I have no intention. I still wanted to fight. And I spoke when I was appointed this judge. I took it on one condition, that I'll be allowed to remain commissioner, Commission for Racial Equality. And Lord Irwin, the Lord Chancellor then, said, well, it may be difficult. And I sent a message back. Answer is no, I'm not accepting it. And I think civil servants put pressure on him to appoint me. And then he released a statement. I'm delighted that Judge Singh would be able to retain his position as commissioner for Commission for Racial Equality. So, I continued, and there were people coming in saying, why are you asked to lead the Zahid Mubarak inquiry? We have been at the bar for longer than you. We have been judges for longer than you. Why haven't we been asked? And why are you doing formal investigation of prison service? We have better experience. Is how you are performed yourself. I have always maintained that promoting and learning culture for changes and continuous improvement and transparent and accountable for your actions. We each attends leading the training session. I'm trying to remember what Mandela said when he was asked by the present new governor to persuade the other prisoners from misbehaving and please control them. And Mandela said, "Can I have a meeting?" the first time. And he was allowed. And they all took in turns to chair the meetings. Mandela was encouraging and promoting everyone to be leaders. And it is important that we all commit stand others' views. Denning was one of the strongest human beings around, and he was very determined that you must respect anyone. And I believe the strongest factor for success is having self-esteem, believing you can do it,
Yes.
believing you deserve it, believing you will get it. Life has no remote control. We have to get up, get involved, and change it. And that is how I have looked at I do encourage young people and not so young people to get up and get involved and be involved in bringing about changes. Things won't happen unless you get involved.
Absolutely. Wow. Chair, people are sharing loads and loads and loads of comments. People are really touched. They're saying it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. So much respect for what you've done and what you've achieved. How resolute, never to compromise on your principles. Really empowered. We have just 5 more minutes. Ask you. Can you, oh wow, Menai, one of your trustees, says, you are one of the most inspirational role models that he has ever met. And she has ever met. And question, how did you keep going despite all the injustice, all the prejudice and racism that you faced continually throughout your career and your life? Where do you get that tenacity and grit of character to keep going?
I think it fits in with perhaps who my heroes are. And there were many: Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Lord Scarman, Reverend Archbishop Tutu, whom I met many times. And he had a freedom of town of Merthyr. So as a judge there, we used to dine there. And one night when we're dining, Grace, his wife, had to go upstairs because she was not well. And I said, "What's the matter with her, sir?" "Oh, nothing. Lord will take care of that. She has cancer." And it was so humbling. But I had all the strength from a woman, a lady, who showed me how to be a leader, listening to the views of everyone, not necessarily agreeing with all of them. Be fair and compassionate, but firm and agree to disagree. And it went on. She herself listened to many of others outside the group, but never allowed her principle being undermined by anyone. She was compassionate, passionate, dedicated, transparent, with equality and fairness, at the same time encouraging and um, each and every one. And that was my late mother.
Wow. What was her name, Chair?
Ram Kumari.
Wow, what an inspirational woman. I think we've almost run out of time today, but I wondered whether you could give us, before we do that, I know that you dined with not just the Archbishop Desmond Tutu, you dined with the Queen and the Prince, the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, in 2002, I think it was 25th of October, and of sitting on the left side of the Queen and talk to her the whole evening. What did that feel like, from washing dishes to being personally invited to dine with Her Majesty the Queen?
Well, I arrived at the palace, and having had a taxi driver to take me there, and I said, "Sir, can you take me through the gates?" "No way. I'll never go in there. There are too many racist people there." So he dropped me outside, and there was a big crowd outside, usual people, not looking come to cheer me. But so I tried to struggle through there, and the police.
Oh,
I went through, and I'll call him Butler. The door said, "I'll have orange juice, please. Let me show you the seating arrangements." So as he showed me, I looked at it. There are only 12 people, and I'm sitting next to the Queen. I said, "Can I have something stronger?" It was really humbling. She is a very, very knowledgeable, kind human being. And having talked to her, when the protocol allowed me to talk to her, because I was sitting on the left and she was talking to people on the right, so I couldn't talk to anyone by on the other side, because that would be talking over her. And as we were having a main course came, and I asked the waiter to just give me one slice of beef, because Mom Edinburgh said, "You can have more than that. You're a big chap." And she looked at my plate and she nudged me elbowed me and said, in my ribs, "Come on, you have 3 or 4 of those. Let me help you, Sue." And she helped it from the plate and put it on my plate. And then we're talking about Fiji, and she knew everything. And I said, "Mom, I remember you coming to Fiji in 1956. I was very young." And she again elbowed me and said, "Oh, not so young." And then I escorted her after the dinner, lunch, very long corridor. And she said, "You are involved in racial equality." I said, "Yes, Ma'am." She paused, said, "Do we have to be? Why can't we be equal and talk to and treat people equally? You must have found it very difficult coming here. I know all about blacks, dogs, no Irish. I know all about it. This is horrible for you, where you come from Fiji, where you are so happy, free walking everywhere." And it was interesting and humbling experience.
wow.
We could talk about that for hours.
Absolutely. Wow. We are so proud of you, Judge Singh. And I'm sure everybody amongst those who are listening, you're having so many comments coming through. Thank you. me. Incredible to see some of the challenges that you've faced and how you keep going, even today, challenging racism and challenging inequalities. Well done to you, Judge Singh. So incredible. Reggie's clapping, sending love hearts, love at the top. We've run out of time, literally, but can I ask you your top quality for a leader? What is leader should have?
Be humble and compassionate.
Well said. Absolutely well said. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you George Ray Singh, CBE, Chair of Race Council Cymru. We will invite you back, Judge Singh, to do part 2, because I think we've only just scratched the surface of what your experience has been. We need to learn more from giants like yourself. Thank you for coming on the hot seat. And a special thank you to Taiwo Okeneye of Vivid Block International for persevering and keeping the technical team going. Thank you for not giving up. Have a wonderful evening, everybody, and see you all in a month's time, where we'll meet a new leader on Leadership on the Hot Seat. Diolch yn fawr iawn. And a big thank you from Menai. Diolch. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you very much, Uzo. Thank you, Tayo.